Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Scaredy Chat. I'm Monica Suriagi.
And I am Kaitlin Riley. Hey guys.
We have on a lovely friend from the horror world who really is a horror aficionado, Phil Nobile. It's been a whole week of new movies that have come out. And, you know, I don't know if anybody has seen Malignant yet, but it is causing quite a stir online. People are having very visceral reactions to it. And Kaitlin, I know you saw it, so tell me what you thought.
Oh my God. So first of all, visceral reactions. I've never seen Twitter blow up so much about a movie that I truly did not think that Twitter or really anyone would care that much about. All due respect to James Wan, a filmmaker who I absolutely love. You might know him. He is one of the filmmakers behind Saw and is also I believe a director and also producer behind The Conjuring. I think it's kind of like the James Wan universe is like the Conjuring universe. It's synonymous kind of. So love him, totally respect him. But Malignant, if you watch the trailer is about a woman who is in her house and she kind of sees murders in what seems like her dreams. So you're kind of like, okay, supernatural vibes, so awesome, great. I actually was watching a different movie with my friend Jacob, shout out Jacob, who I do think sometimes listens to this. So if not, I'm talking to no one, but hi, Jacob. But yeah, so we were watching The Night House and he's like, I don't mind if we skip the previews because I literally can't watch this Malignant trailer again. But this trailer, Monica, told you absolutely nothing about what the movie is about.
I did see that. So this is going to be a spoiler heavy episode, everybody. If you haven't seen Malignant, fast forward to the interview later. But I haven't seen it yet either, but I'm participating in this chat because the twist was spoiled for me. So it doesn't even matter. But I did see the trailer and no inclination at all of what's coming.
So, I love a twist. That's my favorite thing in the whole world. So the second I heard that there was a twist in this movie, I was like, oh my, M. Night Shyamalan, I must now actually watch it. I was probably going to see it anyway, but it wasn't tip top of my list kind of a thing. I actually still have to see the third Conjuring, which was definitely above this one. But no, me and Ian sit down to watch this movie. And the first hour, maybe hour and 10 minutes, which is most of the movie, it's sort of okay, this is kind of cheesy and kind of a little, I can't really explain it. It almost feels like a B movie from the 90s that, I don't know if you ever had this experience, but the movies that would go straight on demand, before streaming was a thing. There were these movies that my sister and I would rent on the Dish Network, on demand or on Fios on demand or whatever it was. And you're
totally.
Where did these come from? I don't know, but usually they were fun and very memorable. But it was kind of that vaguely clunky, people had there was this part in the movie where the girl reveals to her sister that she was adopted at 8 years old. And it's not really a secret, it seems, once they go to talk to her mom, but the sister had no idea. And I'm like, how wouldn't you know that your sister was adopted when she was 8? It doesn't.
Wouldn't she have just appeared one day?
Well, so she was the baby, but it's very strange because it's that's a big chunk of life that she didn't experience, that nobody asked her about. It didn't really feel like a huge secret, but anyway, just weird things like that. So you're watching and you're like, okay, now this is the part of the episode where we're gonna get into heavy spoilers. But basically, again, you're warned because this is absolutely crazy. I've never seen a movie do this, but so throughout the whole film, you're seeing the murderer and you're not really sure if he is a person or a demon or whatever, but he has long brown hair like the main character in the movie. So the whole time I'm like, it's really her. It's her, whatever. In some way it is her because they both have long brown hair, but he has a big coat on and she I don't know. I'm like, okay, like what's happening here? As it turns out, I was right. And basically, not only is the killer actually the main character of the movie, it's not that she is the killer. It is that the tumor in the back of her head, which is her parasitic twin, who is also somehow able to communicate through the radio and is also like a terrible, terrible person. He is the one killing people. Basically, her hair splits in the back and a tumor that is sentient comes out and is murdery whenever she is like asleep.
It's like Fight Club.
It is actually somewhat like Fight Club. The weirdest thing about it is that the moment when you actually see how that works, it's phenomenally insane. Like, I can't explain this scene, but basically it all culminates with a scene in a jail cell with like 20 women in this like women's prison. And this parasitic twin, who is a man, I don't know. He's a tumor, so whatever. I don't know if they age.
He's neither, really.
He's really neither, really. But he comes out and like starts like literally just murdering everyone. It's so bloody and it's so disgusting. But it's like she's walking backwards as this is happening, because remember, he's in the back of her head. So he's like slaying everybody. It's horrible. It's so graphic. But then like she just kind of looks like she's propped up almost like a doll, just like being like flung around. It is just wild. Like, you guys, I have to say, even though this was like a twist and it was crazy and bananas, part of me is like mad that more people didn't figure it out earlier, solely because of the title of the film. The trailer didn't give anything away.
That's what I'm saying, Kaitlin, because like, yeah. I haven't seen it, so I can't really talk. I will watch it. But the word malignant means like bad tumor, like bad cancer. Like, so I don't have to watch it. I knew there were tumors involved. You know, like I knew it was going to be about a tumor, something with a tumor. So I'm glad to know that I'm on the right track with that. But it seems pretty obvious.
So it's funny because it's like, if it wasn't for the trailer, if I hadn't seen the trailer, or if I had seen a different kind of version of the trailer, you actually figure it out pretty quickly, because in the opening scene, they're in a hospital of some sort, and the woman who's the doctor character, who, spoiler alert, gets killed very quickly, she keeps screaming, "We have to cut out the cancer." And then that line is repeated over and over and over again in the movie. And then the title of the movie is Malignant. So I don't want to say that it's super, super obvious, but it's like obviously there's gotta be some connection, because it's like malignant cancer. Like it just repeats and repeats and repeats. But I will say the twist is like, even for when it's like not insanely surprising, it's so wild when it actually happens. Like, it's just crazy. Actually, same friend. So Jacob, I told him we had watched half of the movie, or more than half of the movie. And I was like, okay, like whatever, like it's fine. And then we had to watch it the next day because I was like gonna fall asleep. And I was like, Jacob, I don't know. It's like, I don't get what Twitter's like freaking out about. It turns out the last like half hour of the movie is when that prison scene happens. Like, all of this crazy stuff happens. So if you're kind of bored at the hour mark, you might not be bored at like the hour and 1 minute mark.
You just gotta wait for it.
You just gotta wait for it, but it's absolutely wild. I don't know. I think you guys should all watch it, even knowing the twist. I think even if you don't watch the whole movie, if you have HBO Max and you just skip through and get to that like hour mark and see this scene in the prison, it is totally worth it. I don't know.
I love the idea of a bonkers movie. Like, everybody who I know who saw it was like, I was so bored and then I was so alarmed. And like, that's awesome. Like, that's such an accomplishment, you know? Like, that's kind of how I, and you know, not that I'm anywhere even a percentage near the level of James Wan, but like, that is how I kind of approach this short. Like, I wanted it to be slow and maybe a little bit boring, until it's 13 minutes total until around like the 9-minute mark. And then shit starts to pop off. But I was like, I want people to be like, where is this even going? I'm bored. Actually, I was just in a meeting, kind of talking about like directors and, everybody has that crazy movie that they want to make. Like this thing that hasn't really been seen before. It doesn't make sense. And maybe it's not super marketable, like it's this crazy idea and it's like hard to pull off. I think Malignant is a good example of that. But in this meeting I was in, they were kind of telling us like, you have to earn that place in your career. The first movie you make, very rarely, it happens obviously, but very rarely is going to be this off the wall thing that no one's seen. You kind of have to make a few movies that are more commercial, more in line with what people are used to. If you're going the traditional, studio funded route, if you're doing your own indie stuff, do whatever you want. But you know what I mean? Like that route. And so he did The Conjuring, he did Saw, a bunch of like, and then you can be like, look at my weird fucking tumor movie, that I've been sitting on for who knows how long. So I'm just looking forward to the point where I can whip out my weirdest shit because I've earned it.
Well, it's funny. It's like, yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, no offense to The Conjuring, a franchise that I actually absolutely love. I think it's fantastic. I love that they like created an expanded universe, but it is a pretty traditional, like scary movie. And it's also very like Christian based, which is like, some people have had issues with, but like as someone who is not a Christian, like I've never really been bothered by, because I'm like, this is like all made up anyway, so it's fine. Like, what's the difference? Like, it's okay. There aren't, hopefully, fingers crossed, actually demons in this universe, at least in the way that they are in The Conjuring. I don't know. I'm just going to cross my fingers on that one. But yeah, those movies made, I think, like $1 billion. Like something absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But I will say, like, Saw, when that first came out, that was considered a pretty bonkers movie. But it also was kind of, it was kind of similar, I guess, to Seven. So people were probably used to something similar.
It didn't have that crazy, otherworldly, supernatural, this can't happen thing.
True. Yeah, it's not a... Jigsaw's not a tumor living in the back
of a... the puppet is actually alive. It's actually the puppet.
I would like that. I would like that so much.
Absolutely not.
Can I give it a... No, I really wouldn't. Saw is actually a pretty perfect film as it is. So, and Malignant is perfect also in its own unique way. Please go watch it.
I love it. Yeah, you've really hyped it up. I was going to watch it anyway just to watch it, but now I'm actually excited about it. Because I was kind of feeling like it was like, horror required reading. Like after the trailer, I was like, oh, I'll watch it because I know I have to, but I'm not really excited about this. But now I am.
Now it's good homework. I love it. It's great.
Hello, Scaredy Chat listeners. It is spooky season, the most wonderful time of the year. And I'm very excited for today's episode because we have on a lovely friend from the horror world who really is a horror aficionado. And if you have an article of Fangoria in your house, you can thank Phil. Everybody, Phil Nobile.
Hello.
Hi, Phil.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for hopping on and joining us a little bit last minute. I think I texted you like 3 days ago if you wanted to do this.
Yes, I'm getting ready to fly to Austin tomorrow where I'm going to see you and your short film. I'm excited for that.
Have you seen it yet?
I saw a rough cut, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it finished with a crowd.
It's fantastic. So nice. You're in for a treat. Not to brag about Monica, but Monica won't. So there we go.
I bought in early on Monica. She was in a documentary that I helped produce called Horror Noir. So I've been knowing about Monica, so it's all good. I'm excited to see her film.
I love that documentary. We literally, I think 30 of us went to see it. It's a fantastic documentary in addition to featuring Monica, who is fantastic. Yeah. So,
well, thank you both. I definitely got a nice bump forward in my horror career thanks to Phil. I'm very appreciative.
Well, group effort. And, if you were terrible, we would have cut you out. So, give yourself some credit.
Yes, I made the final cut. I am in the finished product.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, today we're here to talk about you. and your fears, specifically your childhood fears.
You know, my parents, there were 7 kids in my family, and, you know, they did their best, but, you know, they just were going to go see a movie. And if one person was going to see The Exorcist, then all 7 of us were going to see The Exorcist. And I had to sort of get right with that stuff early on, I think. But, you know, movies did kind of freak me out as a kid. But as far as real life fears, I mean, I had one dream where like a girl from like the Little Rascals era, like a girl in black and white was haunting my house and coming after me. Like the house was in color, but she was in her weird, like, you know, Little House on the Prairie curls, and she was black and white, and I didn't care for that at all. And it gave me an aversion to like old timey photography for a little while, maybe. But you know,
were you afraid that you would see her in a photo and be like, "That's her"?
It was that thing which, you know, so many movies have kind of played on, where including I think It Follows, where like something's coming after you in the dream. So few of my dreams ever got to a point where I was like engaging with the thing that I was afraid of, because I was always. So you knew there was danger. You knew something was coming for you. I knew she was bad news, but I didn't know what was going to happen if she got me. And I still to this day don't.
That's
hopefully
so true.
We never find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of true. It's like I've never really experienced a dream where the thing I'm afraid of actually comes for me. And I don't know what would happen. Some people say if you die in your dream, you die in real life, but I feel like that's 100% not true.
That can't be true.
I think I've died in a dream or two. I think I have.
And you're still here, in theory.
Yes.
This could be a simulation. Who knows? I think so.
So one thing I think is really interesting is, so you are the editor-in-chief of Fangoria, but you said in your text to Monica that you couldn't watch horror movies for a pretty long time, I guess, unless your family was forcing you by way of siblings. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from, I really don't want to watch these, to I'm going to make my entire career about these?
Yeah. God, well, that's a very long story. We can do some of that, but let's talk. So the thing is, when you're a little kid, you're afraid of things because there's so much you don't know. There's so much that's unknown to you. And I think horror movies were, for a lot of us, were a way to sort of test those boundaries, find out where our threshold is for fear, get our heads around sort of giant ideas like death and that something out there will harm you. As a little kid, that's a big thing to sort of get your head around. The problem is that getting through the films was kind of tough for me. I was on my 11th birthday. My older brother took me to see American Werewolf in London, and I made it as far as Griffin Dunn with his throat torn open and his little flappy thing, and I had to leave the theater in tears because I couldn't handle it. But you know what kind of saved me in that regard was stuff like Fangoria and how to make up books, and learning that it was actually craft, learning that it was people making this thing and presenting it in a way that was going to scare me, I think helped get my head around it.
So in addition to American Werewolf in London, what other movies were part of that journey, whether it was like within that summer or even later?
Sure. Well, The Exorcist is the earliest movie I can remember seeing, so it was almost too early to scare me. I don't give away my age, but I was a toddler kind of seeing The Exorcist, but I remember it on the drive-in screen. But that around that same time was The Thing, which I came home and I was afraid of my dog after that, because the dog would look at me and I was like, oh, that dog knows something. That dog is hiding a secret. Creepshow was that year, and that freaked me out too. You know what would really freak me out was commercials.
Ooh.
Commercials for movies. There was one called Silent Scream, and it was like this slow push on this boarded up chunk of attic, and this hand would punch through, and it would kind of creep me out. There's a commercial for a movie called Magic, where it's like a ventriloquist dummy that's talking about murder. Hated that. Did not like that.
Nope.
Monica's favorite thing.
there's one commercial from my youth that I've been looking for it on the internet. See, again, like I'm trying to get my head around the thing that terrified me, but I've never found it on the internet. I finally found one person who wrote about it, but it was a PSA in New York, and it was a woman holding sort of like this 1950s housewife photo in front of her face, and she was talking about how she and her husband smoked. And my husband smoked all day, and he liked to smoke in bed. One night he fell asleep with a cigarette. It was his last. And she takes he burned to death, and she takes the photo down, and she is horribly, horribly burned. And she goes, I guess you could say I was the lucky one. And I've been able to recently figure this out. This is over 40 years ago. I'm able to recently figure this out, that it was a PSA by the New York Fire Department. We found the woman's name. We found like obituaries, and I don't know why I want to see it again. But the thing of it is, after the first time we saw it as kids, it's a 30-second spot, and she only takes her face away in the end, right? Whenever that picture came up, and they ran the shit out of it one year, like, we would run out of the room. We would like run screaming and not want to watch it. And it's horrible because this woman was like actually burned. This is a real person. But those PSAs in the 70s and 80s didn't play. And they were more traumatic than any movie I've seen.
That's absolutely traumatizing. I'm almost positive that I have seen that, or I've seen some sort of version of that, if not the exact same thing. But that sounds so familiar. And that is really disturbing because it does kind of have like the tropes of like a, almost like a horror movie. Like, this is a bad thing that can happen to you if you don't, sort of abide by like the rules in a way. Yeah, it's a little, that's a little sad, obviously, but
did it scare you?
Yikes!
Did it scare you out of smoking?
Well, let's put it this way. I remember I said I had 6 brothers and sisters. All 6 of them, plus my parents, all smoke, and I never did. Oh. So maybe.
Yeah, I think it worked. But it's not really anti-smoking, I guess, as much as it's anti-smoking specifically in bed.
Smoking in bed, yeah.
Yeah. But also probably not smoking would solve all
maybe
the problems.
I was like, you never know when I'm going to get drowsy. I better not have this cigarette.
Anywhere near me or my bed. I mean, that's what, like spontaneous combustion and the debate of if it can really happen or not. It's theorized that most of the time when it looks like that's what happened, it was really somebody smoking who fell asleep.
Wait, sorry, what? There are people saying that it's possible to spontaneously combust?
Oh my gosh, yes. There's so many like scholarly articles from like the 1800s about how we could burst into flames at any moment.
Have we talked about this before?
I don't know if we have. Most of them have been disproven. There was this one guy whose life's mission was to prove that we can spontaneously combust. And everybody else was like, no, dude, this isn't right. Like, your facts are not right. But he wrote a bunch of articles about it. And there was a woman who like all they found was like her feet, and like the chair she was in was burnt to a crisp, and like the fat from her body was pressed into the cushions, and she was completely gone. And it's like, how did this happen? But they realized like she was smoking and she fell asleep.
Yeah.
So she just burned instead?
By the time she like woke up, she was already engulfed in flame, and it was too late, and that's usually what they think it is. Like if somebody spontaneously combusts, they were either smoking or a candle very close to them fell on them while they were asleep. So
there was a real last gasp of that Mysteries of the Unexplained stuff in the 70s and 80s where like I have whole books I remember as a kid, and it was like, this is the time that toads fell out of the sky, and and then there was a spontaneous combustion chapter, and then there's Bigfoot, and then there's UFOs, and it seems like all this stuff kind of fell away once we all had devices that could record every second of our lives. All these mysteries sort of just stopped happening. I don't know. Would you prefer to see death coming and like get your affairs in order, or would you rather just get like hit by a bus and then someone else has to clean your house out?
So one of my biggest fears in the world, and when you said this earlier that you weren't afraid of heights, I was like, that's dumb. You should be. No offense. One of my biggest fears is it's heights, but it's not heights like, oh man, like heights are so scary, like vertigo or whatever kind of thing. For me, the reason why I don't like heights is because I have this fear that I will either fall or jump like off a building. I don't want to, but like, what if? Like, that's the whole thing. And the thing that scares me the most about that is that I will see death coming, because there's nothing you can do once you're off a skyscraper or once you're like bungee jumping or something like that. There's nothing you can do. No one can save you. Like, I don't even think like if somebody could fly to come get you, like mathematically it would work out. There's absolutely
they would just
nothing.
smash your body in the air and you'd still die.
Exactly. Like that Spider-Man situation with Gwen Stacy or whatever, like would break my neck. It'd be horrible. So there's nothing that anybody could do. And that is my biggest fear probably ever. So would rather be hit by a bus.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, even that's giving me too much time. Maybe I would rather spontaneously combust. I think I would. You know what? I take back everything I just said. I would rather spontaneously combust. 100%.
Right.
Have you heard of Swedish death cleaning?
No.
Yeah.
This is like a very Swedish thing where like you plan ahead for your death in the sense of there are Swedish death cleaners and they come to your house and they help you go through all your stuff. And like we could do it now. You know, like it's not like something where you're in hospice. It's like when you think about it, you could hire one of them. They'll come. They'll help you save what needs to be saved for family members and, you know, what has value. But then they help you get rid of other things. And I would love to do something like that, too. Just like, you know, so it's not left to your relatives. It's all done already.
When you said it, I thought it was something that my friend once referred to as a shovel buddy, which is you make a pact with someone in your life. And when you die or the other person dies, you've got to go and get rid of all of their incriminating stuff. You've got to delete their hard drives. You've got to get rid of their porn or whatever personal filth that they've saved that they don't want the world to be seeing. It's called a shovel buddy, apparently. And I don't have one yet. So I'm in the market. I don't know if anybody out there is, looking for one, but hit me up.
That's a good movie idea.
That's a movie title too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Actually, is that a movie? I'm like, that's so familiar.
If it's not, I'd be so surprised because it writes itself. Like one of them dies, you go to get rid of their shit, and it opens this whole wormhole of stuff they didn't even know about them.
Exactly. Huh.
Maybe we should air that part. Maybe. Yeah. Got to take that one to your agent instead.
Right.
Okay. If it's not a movie, it will be in 2 years.
The IP is this Zoom call. So they need IP now. There we got it. We already got it. So Phil, we are going into our next segment, which is called Chill versus Chilling. Or chill or chilling. I actually don't know if it's versus or. We have not decided. Where basically we ask you if something is too scary for you, so chilling, or if you would do it despite the terror that it would ensue. So that's chill. So chill is good, chilling is bad. No, not doing it. And yeah. So that's basically the game. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Interviewing your number one horror icon. So first of all, who is that for you? Have you interviewed them? Were you scared? Would you do it? I imagine you would do it because you have a magazine to run.
I do. It's my job, right? But the fact is that my horror icon, are you talking about filmmaker or like?
Could be anything. Like, sky's the limit. Blue sky here.
Yeah. I mean, I was privileged to interview George Romero in 2000 and he was amazing. And he is my guy. He's like my number one horror director. He was fantastic. We had dinner and it was for film students, and I sort of got invited because I knew the most about Romero. So I just sat next to him and asked him questions, and he talked to the whole crowd of film students. And it was very chill, to answer your question. So,
wow.
Yeah. And I'm glad I got to do that before, while he was still with us.
That's amazing. That is so cool. Wow. Is that like taped somewhere? Can I watch that?
It's not. It was in 2000. So like, not a whole lot of portable video equipment at that point. But yeah, it just worked out. And, he was coming off of, he hadn't made a movie in like 7 years and kind of couldn't get anything off the ground at that time. 5 years later, he would come back with Land of the Dead. But at the time, he was just sort of taking speaking gigs at colleges if people wanted to bring him in. So that's how that ended up happening. He was fantastic.
I can't believe he couldn't get something off the ground. That feels so horrible.
He said he told a story about how he made more money writing scripts that didn't get made in the 90s than he ever made making a film.
I could believe that. Yeah, but that sucks. So,
But he invented zombies.
He did, but zombies weren't zombies weren't back for a minute. I think Shaun of the Dead might have been like the toe in the water, and then Resident Evil, once that finally got made, started that again. But he didn't get to lead the way on that new wave of zombie movies. He had to play catch up somewhat, which was a drag, I think.
That's true. Yeah. Oh man, if only he had lived for that second zombie renaissance, he would have crushed it. Yeah. And we do have him to thank for like Night of the Living Dead. That's like the shining example of a Black person taking charge. And
and there's echoes of Romero for me in Get Out. Like the end of Get Out is very much a conversation with the end of Night of the Living Dead in terms of like what you think is going to happen to him at the end of the movie, and I think Peele is the guy who's doing the commentary that Romero used to do, which is extra exciting for me. But yeah.
So skydiving, how do you feel about it?
Super, super curious to do it. I've been told by my sainted wife that I'm not allowed to do it. But remember when we talked about whether or not you could see death coming? Like if I found out I had a week to live, I would probably go skydiving every day.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Like if I was diagnosed with like in the next week, I would do it.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, I would do it on the last day. I wouldn't. I don't want to risk it beforehand.
That's
like,
true. You waste your whole week because you splat it into the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. No, your wife is smart.
She is very smart.
I often tell my husband things of that nature, but usually it's like no riding on a motorcycle because Monica's mom called them donor cycles, and I've never left that from my brain.
My mom calls them donor cycles, and she's like, and if I find out you were riding one, I'm going to be furious.
Wow.
And now I take that. I am also exactly the same rules as your mom. But yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, so just be careful, and listen to your wife.
Yeah, she's right on that one. I would like to go skydiving, and I could tell this story again, but Kaitlin has heard this 100 times at this point, but
this is my favorite thing ever.
When I was in high school, I got like a metal rod put around my spine. So there's lots of metal and shit in there. And when I was coming back for like follow-up appointments, the doctor was like, don't go skydiving now. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, if you go skydiving, the force of the fall will rip that metal right out of your body. And I was just like, excuse me? What?
Wow.
And I realized now, I think he was kidding.
He had to be kidding.
Yeah. And, we can Google this.
We can easily Google this. Yes.
But the funniest thing about this to me is that Monica told me this believing it, and I didn't question it for a second. And I've repeated that story to other people. I'd be like, my friend can't even go skydiving because she has this metal rod in her back.
Wow.
And I was just like, yeah. And people have questioned it. They've been like, that doesn't really make sense. And I'm like, no, like a doctor
told her that she would die.
Yeah.
And
but you know what I was thinking about? With that metal and that bone, little spark, little spontaneous combustion, maybe?
Instead, the metal will stay in, but it'll just explode.
Yeah, it'll be fine, but poof, you won't make it to the ground, but not for the reason you think.
Exactly. Yeah. Plot twist, spontaneous combustion. Ooh,
extremely
I'm going to use that for everything.
Well, Phil, I think that is it for our chat.
All right.
Thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, where can they find you? Share your social, share anything else you want to
I do not need to be found anywhere. You don't need to come looking. It's all good. But I would love for people to go to fangoria.com and check out what our web editor Angel is cooking up every week. It's a lot of cool stuff that you won't find anywhere else. We digitize old issues of the magazine every week, so you can page through like one from the 80s. It's very cool. And great merch happening every month there. And then our new issue 13, Dragula is on the cover. I'm very excited. It's on shelves at Barnes & Noble and comic shops on October 12th. So please buy it.
Yes. Oh, I love Dragula. And I'm like, I don't know if you know, Phil, but I'm like friends with Steven now, Bitch Pudding, because of you making that recommendation.
Oh, I didn't know that, but Bitch is awesome. Bitch is like the next great horror host that hasn't happened yet, I think.
100%. Like, we've worked together on so many videos, and she was a guest on the podcast too earlier in the year.
Fantastic. That makes me happy.
Yay.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
How do we end this, Monica?
Well, I hope that, drudging up some of your childhood fears wasn't too heavy of a way to start the day, but I'll see you soon.
All right. See you in Texas.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on Scaredy Chat. We hope you were a little scared and maybe a little relieved about your fears. And if you're having fun listening to this podcast, please rate and review and subscribe so you never miss it and you're ready with us every week. And hey, make sure you follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at scaredychat_podcast. And maybe you have a fear and you're wondering if other people are afraid of it too? Well, we probably are, but you should email us your fears at story@scaredychatpod.com and maybe we'll talk about it on the show. Till next time, Scaredy Cats. Bye! Scaredy Chat was developed and hosted by Kaitlin Riley and Monica Moore-Suriagi. Produced by Jeff Swimmer. Editing and sound design by Fitz Harris. Theme music by Eric Fashingbauer with samples by Jeff Zahn and Jack Lenz. And Gail Gilman is the executive producer.